Hello, it's Josh here from Racing to Profit. I hope you can hear me. In this video, I thought I would take a look back at some recent winning tips with the idea of sharing some of my thought process, I suppose, kind of talking through the examples, all with the aim of hopefully helping or giving ideas to those of you who like to analyze horse racing yourself, like to try and solve the puzzle, and with any luck, I may give you some useful ideas, or at least in any case you will maybe have a peek into my mindset and how my thinking and analysis has worked so far this flat season. I'll talk through some of the winners from kind of a couple of Fridays ago, which started the good run. One of you good readers, he doesn't do it for free, don't worry, but I know, or I know I need to be, or needed to be, much better at how I record results and everything else, and obviously it can take time to do it properly. In any case, this kind of spreadsheet, I kind of share it monthly in the results tab, but you can kind of, on this particular screen, there are the tips kind of at advised price and Betfair SP, and we're tracking to each way as well, actually, to see how they do. But you can kind of see the journey the tips kind of have been on since the first one on the 3rd of June. I should say also that I'm not going to attempt to make this video short. It will be as long as it is, and it is very much aimed at those of you who, like I said, like trying to solve the puzzle and finding your own winners with the help of improving all of our success longer term. And I suppose the first thing to say is there will always be losers, and there will be lots of them. I was doing within 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th tip of the flat season one, and then we had a bit of a losing, well, not really much of a losing run, but got to minus 10 points before Scarlet Dragon, thank the Lord, won each way at 33-1, which obviously boosted the coffers, and then a losing run kicked in, which will do so again, where we dropped about 25 points, did we? We went down to plus 6 from plus 29, so 24, 23, 24 points or so, which wasn't a fun period. But then the day that really super bolted up at Market Raisin was a good day indeed, as there was a couple of winning tips for at Newmarket for Mark Johnston, which I'll start on in a minute. We then had Zabeel Champion, Jawal, a bit of kind of placed profit, small placed profit return. Glentees again for Mark Johnston. Rafe Beckett then did us a turn with Mr. Kiki, Sparkling Ollie, place return for Mac the Cat, who looks a bit one-paced in truth, and Dark Jedi, a few little kind of -8 again, which is kind of will happen often, and a -20, -30. Maybe worse will happen again at some point. I can't keep up the current return on investment, however hard I will be trying to do so. Then we had Lahore at York, which is kind of where I'll stop, and Pop Dancer yesterday. I'm recording this on Wednesday the 22nd of July. So yeah, I just want to touch on those, however many, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those 7 winners or so, I just want to kind of touch on because they all kind of help highlight my overall thinking, I suppose, and approach to trying to find value bets on the flat. So where do I want to start? Well, the first thing to say is, I'll jump back over to the blog and I will find the post which included Cape Coast. So this is the post from the 10th of July when a kind of relative winning spurt happened. The profit now sitting on around plus 70 points. To advise, generally available morning prices at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. whenever I tip, or 10 a.m. One of those 3 slots, and I keep a close eye on them. obviously for when they go up, to make sure the recorded price is fair and is something that I think everyone should have been able to get within kind of 15 minutes or so to half an hour of posting. Like I said, that I, bar the odd evening before for a big Saturday race on a Friday, all the tips go up either around 8 a.m, 9 a.m, or 10 a.m, and you can keep track of how they're coming along with my little kind of updates as you go. But for regular readers, hopefully that's pretty clear by now. We went into this on a bit of a back of a losing run. Cape Coast and Zabeel Champion adding some much needed profit to the coffers and indeed boosting confidence, which is always important. The first thing to say is this flat season, I kind of used lockdown productively. I think I had a mental rest, and had a long think about the content, how I did the content, the kind of research I produced and posted, and different angles, thinking along the lines of trainers and sires, and trying to think of unique angles that may not be found elsewhere, but also trying to kind of do a less is more approach, although I'm saying that looking at a kind of very busy day of racing, using horse race base ratings top 4. They're kind of explained in the link that you can read in every post, which kind of explains the blog content in the different sections, including links to the various reports which kind of power the qualifiers within these different sections, but hopefully straightforward enough. I suppose the overall point is I wanted, and I hadn't really done this before, which is a bit silly really, but I wanted to just zone in and really focus on the content I was producing as my starting point and as my way in. And I suppose that's the general first thing to say, is that if you like picking your own winners and solving the puzzle yourself, or trying to, is having some sort of way in or starting point isn't a bad thing. For me, that's horses hitting either my stats content or my horses to follow content, and they also can be found normally in the regular Tracker Tuesday posts, either using eye catchers, hot form analysis, sectional times analysis, and keeping track of my losing tips. So having a way in, and you may have numerous different ways in, from stats angles, trainers you may prefer, trainers and jockeys you may prefer, certain types of race types you focus on, sprint, handicap, staying chases, certain classes of races, might just be Saturday ITV races, whatever. Having some kind of way in and focus, I think, is good, especially as kind of the amount of racing, and when things get back to normal, may increase even more. And the alternative, I suppose, is you just flick through race by race, card by card, trying to find horses that stand out for whatever reason. I've tried that before and found it a bit mentally draining and tiring, especially if you're doing it day after day. And we all have different triggers and different things we enjoy. I have found that the focus of using my content as a way in, that naturally leads to days when it's quieter and there are no tip days, because there's either hardly any horses listed in this daily content, or it's just the quality of racing, or nothing really jumps out at the prices, does mean I have no bet days, which are kind of non-analysis days, and those 2 or 3 hours I spend in the morning looking, especially when tips appear. Having days off from that is useful. And I also know deep down that I personally generally get revved up and excited, or more excited, about attacking big races, class 2s, big fields, class 2 handicaps, class 1 handicaps, big fields. I don't know why. We all have our own little triggers, I suppose, which get us excited about analysing horses in different races. Some people love diving into class 5, 6 regularly during the week, and there are better judges than I at that. I do seem to like the classier stuff. That's having that kind of way in, and I'm using my blog content. And if you want a starting point, maybe I'd encourage you to do the same, and you will land on winners that I don't, and vice versa. So having that starting point's good. Obviously, that, like I said, there's the set sections that highlight qualifiers against different reports and my horses to follow approach. There's also then other things I do, so big meeting notes, of which you get quite a few on the flat, and hopefully you've seen the links for Goodwood and Galway, which is coming up next week. I'm particularly excited about Goodwood. We shall see if we can snaffle any kind of Class 2, Class 3 handicap winners that week, and there's a few to attack. You'll know mainly that a lot of my stats, or a chunk, is kind of trainer behaviour based, and I like looking at behaviour elements, especially and even more so in recent weeks in terms of jockey bookings. And yeah, so I've got this content for the July meeting, and without this work and this previous kind of research and posting the horses here, I wouldn't have landed on Cape Cross, you can see here, and I've put in brackets also Frankie, which I'll touch on in a minute, and Zabeel Champion, who was down here. And you'll see, firstly, if I just click that report, that also Frankie. So yeah, when Frankie was riding for Mark Johnston at the July Festival, previous 12 years, 12 rides, 5 from 12, so 5 winners from 12 rides, 8 including those 5 winners had placed 25 Betfair SP. Whenever Frankie rides now, it's of some importance, or arguably more importance, as he books his own rides. He may now, I think his agent retired a few months ago, his long-standing agent. He obviously relies on John Gosden to kind of point him in the right direction. Obviously, when there's a Newmarket meeting, it's only kind of 5 minutes from his house, so that's some consideration for those meetings, I suppose. But he doesn't ride for the sake of it now, and he does save himself. So the fact he was on Cape Cross was a kind of decent way in. And if I just jump over to Gigi's Gold, I will kind of touch on him and highlight a few angles or my thinking behind Cape Coast even. So this is the race card as it was. As you may know, if you've watched some of my previous videos, I kind of use Horse Race Base a fair bit, especially for stats research and producing reports such as that Newmarket July meeting report. But for my kind of a lot of my day-to-day analysis, I use the excellent Gigi's Gold. And yeah, I'd encourage any of you really, if you like solving the puzzle yourself or want to try this piece of kit, and especially the race cards. It's very much aimed at recreational punters, the kind of £5 to £20 range, which I suspect the majority of my readers are in that range, and maybe smaller, plenty of £2, £2.50 players as well who just really enjoy the game. There's a banner below this video and a link if you're watching on YouTube where you can get a 30-day trial for £1, and it really is a piece of kit whereby you kind of need to trial it and dive in, and it's important to have a few strategies, I suppose, and ideas and different approaches you can have, and hopefully by some of the things, or through some of the things I talk through in terms of the 7 or 8 winners I'm going to discuss, I will give you some of those ideas, and obviously you can use those for whatever set of racing tools you use, whether that's just the free cards on the Racing Post or at the races, to have some very decent free cards as well, including pace maps, which are important. So anyway, I've got my way in with Cape Coast. That was the Mark Johnston stats for this. Right, he hit some of my MJ's meeting stats qualifiers for the trainer angle, and Frankie Dettori had been booked, so that had that jockey element, and looking at the jockey, not necessarily who the jockey is, although that is some element, but the actual behaviour behind the booking, and whether the trainer and the jockey have a good record, or what the booking of that jockey indicates on the day. And to be honest, I suppose, like I was saying before, this is the first time I have researched and created the type of flat content I have. It's the first time I've stuck rigorously to it and kind of ensured my brain, I suppose, and analytical brain is rested at enough points throughout a week with that kind of less is more but less is better approach to looking at my content. But yeah, I think before I maybe didn't think about jockeys as much as I have done in the last 2 or 3 weeks or months, whether that's had any impact on the upturn in results, quite possibly. But not necessarily who the jockey is, although we all will have our favourites, and obviously you can look at their track record, their record for the trainer, maybe their record on the horse. If they didn't ride it last time out, is the booking of any relevance or significance? Mark Johnston and Charlie Johnson, they do use jockey stats for different tracks, and quite often the jockey they book from their roster may very much depend on, obviously, if they've got a good record on the horse, but also if they ride a particular track or course and distance particularly well. I believe the team, from an interview they've given before on telly a couple of years ago, do use such information to help decide such things. So that's interesting to know. So yeah, I had that information. So all those things I've just said about hitting that Johnston meeting qualifier, the booking of Frankie Dettori, immediately I was intrigued. Now, one of the first things I do look at is pace. You can, I mean, the sample sizes here is small, but as a general rule, ignoring course and distance, field size necessarily, I am putting a lot more focus on horses that either lead or race prominently. Outside of a couple of set examples or specific kind of race setups, mainly big field straight track sprints, which I will get onto later with Jawal and Lahore. But you could see here, so I can put the total. So for those who don't know, a kind of 4 indicates that they led. A number 1 indicates they were held up on that particular start. This is looking back at their last 4 starts. So last run, second last run, third last run, fourth last run. 2 is kind of mid-division. 3 is kind of prominent, but off the pace. So you could see here, and especially with this pace percentage and the average, that Cape Coast was likely to be up there, and not impossibly got an easy lead. But in any case, Frankie was not going to be round the back if the horse was ridden as he had been. And everyone knows that Johnston and the Johnston team like to keep things simple if they can, and they have the horse to do it and race a horse promptly. The draw was fine for that. So already has kind of ticked a lot of my big boxes outside of looking at the actual horse and the ability of the horse and whether they can compete. Now, if I just open him up here, we can see that he's lightly raced, and a lot of the horses I'll focus on, they do have a profile which suggests there's more to come, but at the same time I am trying to focus on those that have already done something, price allowing. And this horse, from his races to date, had been fairly consistent. Obviously, he's now 3 from 6 places, but he was 2 from 5 places on the turf. So if you looked at some of his turf form, you could see that he'd won fairly easily. He'd gone well in a Class 2, so he kind of had the class and ability previously as a 3-year-old. Went pretty well in a listed race around Chester. And he returned. He'd had 1,024 days off. That was the risk, but he was 10-1 when tipped. There was a 20p rule force. He was recorded at 8. I need to update that spreadsheet I showed you actually, but yeah, he was recorded at 8-1, having been advised at 10. So he returned on this break, and he ran well, and that's another thing which I'm trying to focus on more, is actually horses that have a good recent run and are in form. You may think, well, that sounds rather simple, Josh, and were you not doing that before? You can get too clever in this game, and some long-suffering readers may level that fair accusation at me at times, trying to be too clever with expecting horses to bounce back from poor runs, not necessarily without an excuse. And of course, they're not robots, they're not machines. But in any case, I've got a good price horse here. He's kind of lightly raced, unexposed. It had a long time off, so that was niggle. The niggle really was, could he back this up? But I'm talking about a 10-1 shot here, not a 2-1 shot. He ran on there in an okay race. It was sent off 5-1, so it wasn't exactly smashed in an 8-runner field. You would like to think he would come on for it a bit, but importantly, he was running on at the end. So I'm kind of looking at, I think he's got the ability to compete, and he steps up in trip. Frankie's on for the first time, all those things I previously said. The other thing I can touch on here is the Racing Post rating, which GDs now have, so it saves me jumping over to the Racing Post bar for kind of video analysis. And yeah, it kind of run a 95. Now, I do like when the handicap mark or the Racing Post rating is above the handicap mark that they're on. So that was some indication that he had room to manoeuvre from this mark. Of course, he is lightly raced and unexposed for his age. So price allowing, you can kind of assume that there might be some improvement to come from 90 anyway. And so, yeah, he's ticked a lot of boxes there. You know, he's got my weigh-in, he's got the Johnston meeting stats. The yard were in decent form at the time. Frankie Dettori was in decent form. They both got good course records. The horse is kind of unexposed, lightly raced, consistent, knows how to win. I thought he looked well handicapped. He was arriving in form. There was that pace element, prominent racer. It was soft, given as soft at the time. I was thinking it was going to dry out, but that was the other question, which was probably why I was putting it 10-1, because he wasn't proven on the ground. If this was kind of a soft ground run here at Thirsk, he might have been put in at 7s, 8s, and I might not have touched him, or maybe shorter. I could look through, and I did look through the sire stats for the going at the time. I'm not sure, because I'm looking through this retrospectively, I'm not sure if I can do it, but you can see there's sire here, so I can open up the horse. You can click on the sire. I think because this was soft at the time, I will be able to look at going for Cape Cross, and you can see there this is based on soft in handicap, so you can kind of dive in and have a look, and that kind of 10% win record against that was solid enough for me. And actually, I think I then looked at Johnston, who with Cape Crosses on soft, it had 3 winners. It'd done okay. That was in line with the overall size stats. Oh no, it had a couple of winners at the time. So all in all, at the price, I wasn't too concerned about that. It was an unknown, but they're the kind of unknowns which can make a price, and you then have to make a judgment. So he ticked plenty of boxes there. The other thing to say is, as well as that's also part of my process, I've kind of mentioned a lot of the things I look at there, all within this one horse, is then I kind of look at the favourite and the top of the market and work out whether I want to get them beat or whether I can take them on. Because if I think they're underpriced and they're going to lose, or I can get them out of the frame, that obviously creates a lot of value elsewhere. You don't need to be, well, I mean, I'm a history politics graduate. My maths brain is only okay. You don't need to kind of make this game too overly technical, but it is a difficult sport. It is complicated. That's where the challenge comes from, I think. But applying, I suppose, if you don't already, some of those things I've touched on, or ideas, or incorporate them in your approach, may or may not help you find even more winners. But yeah, also adding in a kind of the profit in this game, the ability to make money longer term, and quite frankly, kind of profit and return on investment is all I really care about, not necessarily win strike rate, not long losing runs, which I'll have. It's the long-term profit. That generally comes from, in my mind, finding horses in that kind of probably 6, 8-1 through to kind of 16-1 range, depending on the field size, type of race, etc. They are the ones, as you've seen from this spreadsheet here of results so far, that really do ratchet up the profit. You know, a 33-1 winner there, 10-1. I need to change that to 8 because there was a 20p rule 4. Zabil, I think there was a 10p, that needs to be changed to 9s. 12-1 Jawal. 18-1 Lahore, but I'm recording that at 22.5-1. Betfair, which was advised to take a price, and that hopefully everyone has a Betfair exchange account. I can't think why you wouldn't. And yeah, that price lasted, and bigger actually, for about 90 minutes afterwards. But that's just to highlight that it's those prices which come season end, year end, 5 years down the line, are the ones which really boost the bottom line. However, there are, of course, 5-2 through to kind of 9-2, 5-1 shots are the kind of bread and butter. and finding plenty of those to keep ticking along is useful also, and also something I'm trying to get better at. And again, not be too clever with just getting my lucky pin and hoping to land in the odd monster which comes along every now and then, but I'm distracting myself, aren't I? This favourite came at the 7-2 shot for a horse that had 428 days off the track. The yard were in form. He was lightly raced and unexposed, but he had distance to prove. His form, I should mention this as well, which I will do for some of the other examples. The then what feature, that's hot form. That's another element of what I think about. Have the horses been running in races and competing in races and winning or placing in races that have produced subsequent winners? And what do those subsequent winners tell you about the horse? What they tell you about how well handicapped they may be and whether they can win from their mark. And that's obviously along with, like I touched on, Racing Post ratings, which I use as some kind of guide, a bit of top speed as well. And yeah, kind of, I always mark up a horse running a race that's produced subsequent winners. I think maybe a few months ago I may have used that as an essential, which I don't necessarily anymore. I'm very much using for marking up in conjunction with RPRs to try and work out how much class the horse has, whether or not they're well handicapped from this mark, which is obviously important when you're dealing with handicaps. In any case, he looked worth taking on and looked ridiculously short. Holy Kingdom was getting to the point where he was coming into the back of this, having won twice. They'd gone up to a mark of 96. The RPR suggested he might still be well handicapped, but he was open to attack from something, to my eyes, which had a bit more in hand. Christopher Wood's form at the time, he was around the 4 to 5 to 1 mark, was he? He was stepping up from a Class 4 at Pontefract to a Northern Class 4. He'd done all right, but he wasn't exactly overly mightily impressive, up to 88 and up 2 classes. So really, I took quite a dim view of the top of the market. I was happy for one of them to beat me at the price, and Cape Coast, who was 10s at the time, for all those reasons stated, did look kind of decent bet, as it turned out. So that's him. We then moved on to 335. So really super bolted up at 25 to 1. I'm still pleasantly surprised she won quite like that. At 240, I was in a pub, half a bottle of champagne down by this point probably, with one of the fellow shareholders in the horse, socially distanced of course, in a pub in Ipswich, just opposite the train station, very handy. And yeah, then he won the 3 o'clock, which was great. And then we had the winner of the 335. Sadly, I didn't do the treble. I think tenner each way on all three was about 25 grand or something. But alas, we didn't do that. And I don't want to think about that too much longer. Now we moved on to the 335, and I'm aware I'm taking around to 30 minutes, but it is what it is. There'll probably be only about 20 of you watch this video, but you 20 are getting some gold today. Yeah, Zebil Champion again hit the trainer angle, and I did a write-up somewhere. In this race, this 3-year-old handicap, Mark Johnson won 5 of the last 7. So again, my weigh-in and my foundation stats are solid. 5 of the last 7. I was kind of thinking at that point, well, I'm going to not back them regardless. But again, the yard were going okay. I backed Overright. He was a bit too keen, bit too fresh, bit out in the middle. He may not have got home, and the soft ground that kind of soft may have been a question. I'm not quite sure. Obviously did okay as a 2-year-old and soft, but that can be deceptive. Overright has more races in him. He was a bit too lit up and a bit too free there, so eyes on him. Zebil Champion was the one. Now, in part, that was because obviously Frankie was booked on Overright, but you could see MJ's record with PJ McDonald in handicaps was kind of solid. There was various different pointers, I think, possibly at the 2 Newmarket tracks as well. I think these stats cover both, but yeah, these are PJ McDonald and Mark Johnston when teaming up in Newmarket handicaps. I think that's both the Rowley and the July course. I I could be wrong. Yeah, no, it is both. So that's, I mean, that's a micro you can note down, take away for the future. But they do very well when teaming up at the Newmarket tracks. I kind of knew that. We've got an unexposed horse. I've got a last time out winner. He was kind of 9-10 to 1. He'd won it well. I also knew the form pretty well. It was only 5 runners, but he was tough, he was hardy. The race had started to work out quite well. I'm not quite sure if it was 3 from 5 at the time. That will include him now, sorry. 2 from 4 or something. The race had kind of started to produce horses that were running well in behind. Obviously, Zabeel Champions won, but yeah, this Charlie Appleby horse had won since. Matthew Power had won since. That makes Union of interest. Union had already touched on through a previous Tracker Tuesday post. I kind of knew his profile and I knew his form on kind of mental recall, and that was in my head, and I kind of, that helps. All these things kind of add up, I suppose. I knew that Yarmouth race had ridden in, which Union had actually been in as well. May be okay. So yeah, he's in form. We've got the Johnston race stat, the PJ stat, an unexposed horse, a horse who won last time out. Because of Johnston's record in the race, I wasn't necessarily worried about the rising class. And he was another, not to bang the pace drum, but another who I knew was going to be up there. You kind of trust in the jockey not to kind of blow their brains out, for want of a better phrase, in terms of doing too much. Obviously, 2 of these are the same yard, so I was confident they wouldn't kind of light each other up. But yeah, it was useful, and you kind of sort by draw the kind of heat maps here. But I knew Overwrite would be. I'll do that here because the stalls were kind of near side, so this helps explain that. I knew Zabeel would be be able to lead his side, Overwrite the other. Over 10 furlongs, they'd obviously all merge, but he'd have the rail and have the near side, which is never a bad thing. So that was another example of that particular horse ticking a lot of my boxes. You can kind of assume they're well handicapped in 3-year-old only from this type of yard, this type of horse. But again, he came into a mark off 83. He'd done an 85 in that Newmarket, so progressive RPRs. That was a career best at the time. I'm not quite sure what mark he's gone up to now, but he did a 96 here. And it wouldn't be impossible that he might follow up again, depending on where they put him. So yes, you've got all those different reasons and different explanations. Again, the ground was a question. That was probably why he was put in the price he was. But again, I looked at the stats, Poet's Voice, out of a Galileo mare. There was enough pointers there for soft ground, which made me realise that while it was a question, I wasn't going to be put off at the price. So that's Zabeel Champion. I will jump over to a couple of the others. I hope you're finding this useful for now. Let me go and find another example. So the next example I'm going to focus on is Glen Tees. I'm going to leave Jawal and Lahore to the end, but he was an eye catcher, and I just wanted to show. So he was through some video analysis and various other things. I may have watched the race at the time, but he was an eye catcher, and I just wanted to kind of show why. So I'm going to run the race. This is over 10 furlongs at Haydock. He's here. Hopefully you can see him in the kind of orange jacket. And if I just play this through a bit, he gets a fairly prominent position. Remember, he's over 10 furlongs. He's kind of in a great position. He's gone the pace the jockey wants to go. And it's kind of, they're approaching the 4 furlong pole here. And what I noticed was that, to my eyes, he got outpaced. The jockey sort of let the race develop around him a bit, but maybe he didn't have the horse. He's just starting to ask him now. He's moving his hands a bit. He's wanting him to quicken. And the truth is that plenty of other horses quicken a bit quicker. He still hasn't asked him here. Now he asks him to start going. And he just is a bit laboured. He doesn't quite pick up. Maybe he's a bit green. You can see under pressure his head's a bit wobbly. He's entitled to be that, and suddenly he gets swamped, and you're thinking, well, he's going to end up out the back of the TV here. You've got Kipps going well here, and he would go and run very well at Ascot. But here's Glen Tees, and what I liked was how he finished. The jockey got stuck in. It kind of clicked. and he beat this lot in front just about, I think, come the line. Yeah, he hit the line hard, having been outpaced. I kind of noted that. That's why he entered the eye catchers. I wanted to see him over further. In his 2 runs since, where I find the right race, he hadn't done much. So that was he went up to 12 there, but again he dictated a slow pace. And didn't really have a change of gear again. I think they should have got after him a bit quicker. He wasn't a backable price the next 2 starts. They then dropped him back to 10 again, where he was outpaced, unbalanced actually. If you watch that, he didn't come down the hill well at all. So I've got an unexposed horse who's run a good race that worked out okay actually. That Kipps form, because of what he did at Ascot, was decent. He'd got some other good form to his name. He hadn't quite won. I thought he had valid excuses for his last couple of runs. So I've got a decent run this season, 2 decent runs, valid excuses for why he may step forward. He was kind of 11 to 2, 6 to 1 here. And yeah, he looked interesting. He was back up to kind of an extended 11 furlongs into a class 4. So he dropped 2 classes. So that's that class thing, and class moves can be important as well. Although obviously class droppers are always a bit more obvious, but he'd been running in better races against better classes of horses. So that's a kind of another thing you can note down and kind of throw into the mix of analysis. He was off a mark of 83, so his mark would coming down, and he had run an 87 and 85 there. With an excuse last time out. So again, RPR's above his current mark, with some kind of hot form. And I also thought he might get a freebie on the front end. Now, in the end, MJ and AA, Andrea Atzini, had better ideas and actually held him up, having been aggressive with him on 3 runs. So that was something for me to learn. A change in tactics, which actually was possibly predictable, but in any case, the point is, I suppose one of my boxes was ticked on paper, at least, in that I thought he would race prominently and be up there, even though it didn't quite turn out that way. And again, there was reasons for thinking the favourite at the time was Sir Michael Stouthorse. He'd come second in the end. He hadn't won. He looked a big old cumbersome horse. I wasn't sure if the track was suiting. In any case, there was just enough there for me to take him on at what seemed a short price. And as it turned out, Glentees did power away come the line. The other thing which I can't, which I can look at was, again, another jockey booking. I thought Andrea Atzini is interesting. In handicaps, you can see now they're now 4 from 14, 4 places in turf handicaps. At the course, they're now 2 from 4. So they were kind of 1 from 3, 1 place, which I found interesting. Oh no, it's had a run since. Sorry, he was 1 from 2 going into this. And Andrea Atzini is one of the top jockeys around. I know that in my own head. He also rides the course very well. And given what I said about the Johnston team and how they look at jockeys and course bookings, I thought that might be maybe significant and interesting enough. And yeah, it was an 8-runner race. 11 to 2, 6 to 1 seemed fair to my eyes. And that was another winner. So there's a few different things there to ponder and take away possibly, and I will find another example. So Mr. Kiki is the next one I'm going to focus on from 15th of July. 1 point win, he won at 11 to 1, backed into 8. The starting point and the way in, again, this is giving me a daily focus, making sure I don't kind of, the brain doesn't get too fried, and that I do have focus on a day. I flick through the afternoon, evening before, and of course this very much depends on if you have time and when your time slot is for both analysis and betting. I have a kind of flick through when I put the blog post together on the preceding evening, but I generally do all my analysis and the tipping on the morning quite deliberately, because I like attacking with kind of fresh eyes. But of course, I realise I'm in a privileged position to some degree to be able to do that. But yeah, so he hit my trainer angle for Rafe Becker, which had been doing okay, and Rafe had been in decent form. So that was the way in for him, to kind of look at him and the race. And there was a few things. It was a 3-year-old only handicap. At the start of the season, I was a bit kind of anti 3-year-old only handicaps because of how competitive they can be. But quite a few of my winners have been in them, and I'm clearly got a liking for them now. I suppose that's another example of never having a set rule as such in what you should and shouldn't be doing in racing and betting. And I've been guilty of that in the past before as well, kind of putting myself in a straitjacket, focusing on certain types of races or X, Y, and Z, and I'm not really quite sure why, while ignoring most of my content. So Mr. Kiki, this was his first start. Because I'm looking back in these race cards, it doesn't have all the features it normally has. Yeah, it was his first start for Beckett, having left Michael Bell. I can tell you now, obviously, if this these drop-down icons don't work because I'm looking back historically and obviously all the data's changed. If I was looking at this now from memory, when I click that trainer form, there'd have been stats for Rafe Beckett, stats for when he has horses from another trainer on their first start for him were decent. I'd also noticed that the same connections had done the similar thing before, I think with a horse at Haydock this season. The horse, unexposed, lightly raced, his record with Ross Orion, so another jockey angle. I suppose there's a theme there. His record with Ross Orion, again, this is another one to note down if you so want, is now 7 from 18, 9 places in all races, plus 18, 19 points to SP, Industry SP. So that's solid. So that was interesting. I think he rode the track pretty well as well from memory, but he may not have had many rides here. We had this Ascot maiden form, so this has kind of drew me in. So I've got a lightly raced horse. I've got my way in from the jockey, the trainer. I've got a jockey booking already. I'm quite excited actually, given these 11s in a 9-runner race. This form had worked out really well. If I click on that again, this is using hot form as an element. I mean, just look at it, blimey! Look at the number of winners and the horses. Now, obviously, Mums Tipple. He would bolt up at York as next door, hasn't done much since. The Varian horse, I mean, look, he won at Ascot, rating 102 in a decent race there. Group race, wasn't it, I think? Man of Promise for Appleby, he'd won since. Here's Mr. Kiki, who won his next start and then didn't do much since. Surf Dancer, mark of 95. So you look through that and I was thinking, well, a mark of 89 surely is going to be well handicapped at some point, given that form. Some of these races worked out well. The other thing of interest here was the course form and trying to think about the behaviour of the trainer. What is he doing and why? That comes down to jockey booking to a point. Why is he bringing a horse that seemingly the last twice had lost his way, or the owners may have thought so, and now they've switched him from Michael Bell to Rafe Beckett, and on his first start for him, 40 days off, he should be fit. He was bringing him to Yarmouth, a course where he'd won, a course and distance where he'd won, so that was ticking a box. The other thing that ticked the box is, and I won't watch the replay of this, but you can go and watch it, there was a clear excuse for how bad that run was, in the sense the jockey's stirrups and his tack just went, and you could see he had both his legs out of the stirrups and was kind of riding rodeo. He had to let the horse coast home. He was travelling all right up to that point. He wasn't messing about. It was clearly a bit tricky. He also went for first-time blinkers. I remembered that Beckett had done that before with a horse, I think from the same owners in that Haydock race he won. May have been different ownership, can't remember. But that was the first blinkers from this season. That stuck in my mind. Again, I suppose that's another point of the more racing you watch, the more things you just remember and things that pop into your head. And all that helps and is a reason possibly for my upturn in current form, and we'll see how long it lasts. He was into, 3-year-old only handicap. So he was doing a few things different. Blinkers, hood. He'd been a bit tricky, I think, in terms of in the prelims. So, and his RPR, he hadn't bettered it, but he'd matched it at least. And you've got the price. You've got so many different factors here. There has to be a horse there somewhere. He's lightly raced, he's unexposed. There has to be a horse based on this form here. there's an excuse for his last run. He arrives fit. He arrives at a course and distance where he's won. Beckett does well with first starters from other trainers. He does very well with Ross Orion. The jockey booking looks significant. He basically ticks every box. Does he tick the pace box? Well, yes. If I sort by draw, kind of near side to far side near. Stalls in the centre, I think they were, but I knew he'd be prominent. You can see the heat maps here for GDs, which are also another excellent part of their tool suite. These are for the kind of draw and pace setup for this course and distance. Obviously, green being good. Obviously, depends on sample size, but you can see here horses that race prominently, generally the place to be. Although held ups had done okay, I should think in some decent field sizes, and they maybe can go too quick. In any case, I thought he'd be prominent. All what I could say is, I didn't think he'd be held up. Which is my first consideration outside of a couple of examples I'll get to in a minute. And he had first blinkers on. Now, normally if you put blinkers on, you're doing that because you want to spark a horse up and get them interested. It makes no sense to my head, in my mind, holding up horses in first-time blinkers. So I thought he'd be prominent. As it turned out, it was. It was another race where I thought the favourite or the couple at the market had questions, although it clearly was an open race. I was taking out a last-time winner, but she was she was dropping down in trip. There was a question of whether she would get outpaced. There was a question of the level of that form, because it was only kind of a maiden novice race. So yeah, those above at the top of the market had questions. 11-1 just felt and looked too big for all of those reasons stated. He pretty much, for an 11 to shot in a Class 3 at kind of Yarmouth 9 runners, he's going to tick every box you want ticked, really. There was a question over his attitude to a point, given the headgear, and whether or not he completely lost his way. But, you know, you could oversee that. There were so many different reasons for why you thought he might improve and run well today. And in the end, he ran really well. I think he put in some decent closing sectionals, and he actually fought off a couple that came to attack him. So not impossible he follows up. So that's him. I've now jumped over to looking at Sparkling Ollie, who was, again, another way in, was a qualifier against my Beckett trainer angle. It was the same owners as, Mr. Kiki from a couple of days before was clearly in my mind. The same owners, the same trainer switch, left Michael Bell, gone to Rafe Beckett. Another 3-year-old only handicap, thoroughly unexposed. Again, a Newmarket maiden. Now, Newmarket maidens are normally pretty strong. You can, that race had worked out well. He had winners in front, behind. The Yarmouth maiden had worked out well. And the other thing which ticked the box were the sectionals. I know I did a video on this at the time. I think I did a video preview. And what interested me about this particular horse, Sparking Ollie's here, was that he was in rear, pushed along, but he put in some really fast sectionals from kind of 7 furlongs to 2 furlongs out. Some of his splits, in 11.27 seconds, 4 to 3 was pretty fast. He'd actually done better than the eventual winner, but his starting point was much further back. Those kind of she, I should say, it's a filly. Those kind of those sectionals caught my eye. Especially dropped back to 8 furlongs, because she showed some pace there mid-race. So she was, she's unexposed. She was doing something different. She'd shown some okay form. Of course, she had to prove that she could win. But I wasn't concerned about that. I forget what price she was, 7s or so. 6s, 7s, in a race again where lots of the others had questions. I knew Mayfair Pompex. I'd watched her before. She'd hit a Fellows angle before. She could be keen. She was normally held up out the back. I thought because of the pace that Sparking Ollie had showed, they would track the leader, and in possibly a less competitive race. Queen of Silka looked exposed for a 3-year-old only handicapper. So there were questions there. Again, lots of boxes ticked. Rob Hornby, Rafe Beckett had a good record at Chepstow. I mean, it was only 2 from 7-5 places or something. The trainer had a great record at Chepstow as well. So I thought it was interesting they were bringing the horse here. You can see that record there in front of you. In handicaps, now 10 from 32. That's another micro angle you may wish to jot down. Beckett, Chepstow, handicap, bet. Well, the market may be slowly cottoning on, but certainly is a decent way in for further analysis. And you can get some decent races at Yarmouth as well, especially maidens because of its proximity to Newmarket. Ran in a Newmarket maiden also, and now you're coming to Chepstow. And yeah, that was the reason for that. I'm now going to focus on 2 more horses and hopefully be wrapped up within the hour. So I'm going to jump back to the 11th of July and focus on Jawal and Lahore, who are a bit different to pretty much every other profile I've focused on, where near enough every other horse I've mentioned that I'd tipped and that thankfully had won, I thought would race prominently. They'd either lead or track the pace, and all bar one of them did exactly that. These 2 different profiles, different types of races. 350 at Ascot on the 11th of July, big field, sprint handicap. The weigh-in, let's find what the weigh-in was. Yes, here we go. Sorry, trends. So I'd done some trends pointers for kind of Trends Thursday. This 350 at Ascot, there were a few pointers for the kind of profile that had done well over the last 12 renewals. I have a set approach for that, and that's a subject for another video another day, is how I use Horse Race Space to identify trends pointers and different things. There's probably some old ones on my YouTube channel from 2-3 years ago, but I'll do another one of those at some point for those of you who like such things. In any case, yeah, Lahore, Jawal were on this trend shortlist, so this is the kind of reason why I do with these big handicaps, because I can find these useful, and this was kind of my way in for focusing on these ones initially, and then my way into the race, and then I would obviously analyse the race in full, but I just want to take a look at Jawal. So yeah, this was that Ascot race. What I wanted to focus on was he was a 5-year-old. Now sprinters and sprint handicaps can come into their own when they're kind of aged 4, 5, in particular 6, and they can get slightly better with age, so that's something to ponder. What caught my eye here was that he had some decent form to his name. I could open it up his profile in more depth, but this Dakota Gold form at York, you could see that race produced a fair few number of winners. He maybe lost his way a bit at the back end of the season. In any case, he returned at Doncaster, and now if you read that and you don't watch it, you think, oh, that was okay, he won. Obviously, again, there's this Racing Post rating that caught the eye, 96, and he was off a mark of 85, and he's now off a mark of 90. So I had some hope that he was fairly well handicapped, and that was kind of matching, if not a career best. So he looked interesting, had some good form to his name, but this is just an example. If I jump over to Racing Post just to watch the replay, this is an example of kind of using your eyes. And any horse I tip, I watch back their last run, if not their last 2 or 3, and try to get through every other horse in the race, although some of them obviously come on mental recall, which helps. But this was the Doncaster race. And there's a couple of things that catch the eye here. There's a fair amount of pace on, or in any case, you can see from him, he's there. He's a strong traveller. You can see how he travels, and in these big straight field handicaps, straight courses, having a horse that goes powerfully through it, and you can see here he's probably doing a bit too much. You can tell by the jockey's hands the horse is wanting to get at it. I was kind of thinking an even stronger pace and a stiffer track might see him even to better effect than he was, but he's got a pace to sit behind here. The jockey moves him out, and if you're just reading the comments, it's hard to grasp how easily a horse won, but look at him. He's come on the bridle. He's on the bridle and he's swept past. He's got horses that have been able to dominate and are still up there, so he probably didn't go overly quick. He hasn't picked up, he's picked up his stick once. To me, he's absolutely hacked up there. And using my eyes and that interpretation of that win, he was a Class 4, jumping up to a Class 2, although he'd run well in a decent Class 2 before. Over a strongly run 5 furlongs, 20 runners. Now this is where I wanted the other end of the scale. If I just let me do the draw. So imagine this. Draw 20 is the near side rail. Actually no, if I look across, so as you look on TV, No, sorry, I'm going to flip that around. Yeah, 20 is kind of the near side, but in any case, there was some pace on the low numbers. I think the stalls were in the near side, I think. So I thought they might get marooned up the middle, but he was close enough to Savalas and I'm a Dreamer, and I thought there might just be some pace here. And normally in these Ascot straight field races, it's best to assume, I think, or especially 18, 20 runners, that there probably will be a fairly hard pace. Just Another Bottle, sorry, he was in this at the time. That's why that looks a bit odd. He was drawn near Jawal, and he was an out-and-out front runner. So, sorry, there was pace on his side. He ended up getting upset in the stalls. So everything's set up. Dodds didn't send many to Ascot from memory. If I just open up again, the GG's is great because you can just click all these things and dig away. That's his Ascot record now. He was 4 from 21, 11 places, so half had kind of won or placed. And that's obviously significant. And look at that, with Callum Rodriguez booked as well, so he clearly knew how to ride the course well, all over 5 furlongs. Blimey, 3 from 4, so you can note down those stats. So I knew all of that. When combining all of those things, again, a last time out winner, Josh, a last time out winner, a horse in form, don't overcomplicate it, who had visually watching the video, and that's probably one of the final pieces on all the things I've mentioned in this video, all the little tidbits and different approaches I take. Watching the video and trusting your own eyes for how good a performance was, or whether or not there was an excuse. Trainer form has been a key element that I may not have mentioned so much, but most of the trainers I've touched on, their horse has been running well, I think, or their place, at least their place percentage has been decent. And the final horse I want to mention here, I might just creep over an hour, is Lahore, who I tipped in this race for various reasons. I'll touch on in a minute. He visibly was upset pre-race. He was sweaty. He was upset. He was next to Just Another Bottle, who reared. I think he kicked him. They pulled Lahore out. He was upset. He was thrashing his head around. The vet had a look. It was obvious at the time he wasn't going to go anywhere near to winning, and he ran a shocker. So that is one of those you can just ignore. Now, he then entered my losing tips pile. So he was flagged in the Daily Post for this race on the 19th of July, the Sunday just gone. He was flagged in the Daily Post under the horse to follow, losing tips, as my weigh-in and starting point. I knew he had a valid excuse. I was happy to put a line and ignore that run. You go back to this Doncaster run. Again, I'm going to just find that and watch that replay with you. So this is Lahore's Doncaster win. There he is there in the blue. Again, look at the pace. So I'm kind of realising, I mean, this was a straight track win, as you'll see. So I know that a strong pace, Jabberwocky's up the front. There's a contested pace. There's more pace coming from the left here from the old boy Caspian Prince. They're really rattling. And this is a horse, he's at the back here. You can see by the jockey's hands, they're not moving. The horse is absolutely tanking. You can just tell by his body language that he's a strong traveller. He's got a load of pace to aim at. He responds to pressure, and he's coming through the field here. Look how he cuts through that like a knife through butter. To me, visually, that was a sign of class, right? I know he's 6, but you look at how he responds here, and he's pulling away at the line. Just look at him. In my opinion, that was a well-handicapped horse. And he had the ability on those visuals. If I just jump back, where are we? I need to find him. If I just jump back to, not that race. Here we go. Sorry. Hold on a second. I found the race. So you can visually, that looked impressive. That was off 96. He did an RPR of 106, so that backed up the visuals. He was coming into 101 here. It's again, race had worked out okay. He had some decent form in the book. You can look back even further, but maybe it's not good to look back too far back. But his last 6-7 runs, again, that York handicap. This was the day after Gulliver had gone second at the Curragh and just got caught on the line in one of their Premier handicaps. So that was in my head. That win against Jabberwocky, who came into that on the back of a win because he'd won at Newmarket, I think, on his return. So it all looks solid form. Newcastle, you can watch, he was slowly away. They didn't go quick enough. basically he was defeated by the pace set up there, and that's an important element of when you're looking at straight tracks, sprint handicaps, the pace profile, how hard they went in races, how strongly the horse travelled, all those different things are factors. I knew that there was an excuse last time. Now he rocked up at York in a race which I know for those of you who may have watched the preview video, look at this pace setup. So we have a leader, Jabberwocky again, the Claim the Nation likes to go for, the Moment of Madness, Dan Zeno, who's on his side. The stalls were at the centre, I think, yes they were. So I was confident he was going to have a similar setup, pace setup, to what he had at Doncaster. They were going to go hard. He was going to be held up and he'd be able to come with a late rattle. I still thought he was well handicapped, even though he was 6. Career high mark, but it looked like he was one of these sprinters, age 5 and 6, who was getting better. Rowan Scott knows him well. He rides the track well. His £3 obviously helped. And there was various reasons why actually I thought the rest, Makana did run well in fairness to him. The rest had plenty of questions also. And he was 24.0, 24 decimal odds after commission, 22.5 to 1 for ages in the morning of the race. I couldn't believe he was that big. Mainly because maybe some people thought he was on a career high mark age 6, but if you watch that Doncaster race in the RPR, I don't know why you'd think that. Maybe they thought he was completely out of form, but you could only watch the end of this replay back, sadly, because the horse broke down in that Ascot race, which was it was horrible to watch. But if you'd have watched the prelims and as they went into the stalls and what happened pre-race, that probably is the only way you'd have picked up what really happened there, and what a muck sweat he was in. So he had an excuse. But of course, you can look at these kind of Ascot races. Some horses just don't like Ascot or don't not like Track X. In any case, his price allowed you to forgive him plenty, but there were valid reasons for his last 2 runs. If you ignored them, he was no 23 to 1 shot based on that Doncaster performance, especially Jabberwocky, who he smashed up there, was put in at 6s or so. Madness. So I think I've been talking long enough. I think this is one of the longest videos I've recorded for quite some time, but hopefully, of all those different things I've mentioned, that starting point, the stats, my blog content, looking at trainer behaviour, jockey bookings, what that may mean, the jockey, the trainer form, big meeting stats, trends, pointers, there you kind of weigh in and your context, looking at pace, prominent racers or horses that lead, or in the context of big fields looking for strong travellers and whether there's a lot of pace on paper. So those 2 different pace elements, and bar races like this, generally avoiding hold-up horses, not focusing on hold-up horses in your kind of day-to-day racing. Well, I think it's probably saving me a lot of points, and again helps you narrow down a racing on a day, and you can use the excellent pace maps and heat maps and everything else in GG's, and at the races have free pace maps, I believe. So using pace and pace maps, if you don't already, is really, really important in my opinion. You've obviously got trusting your eyes, looking at video replays, what you see, and trusting your opinion, not following the opinions of others necessarily if they contradict what you've said or think. Whether or not the horse is well handicapped, again, that's based on watching, using Racing Post ratings, using their actual handicap mark, using hot form, the horses that they've been running in and around in previous races, if they've gone on to win subsequently, what kind of races have they won, what marks have they won from and won from, and of course the profile of the horse, whether they're lightly raced, whether they are whether or not you think there's more to come because they haven't had many runs, the MO of the trainer maybe, etc. If the horse is in form, have they got a decent recent run to their name? And that's something I'm trying to focus more on. And if they haven't, do they have a valid excuse? Have they won recently? Have they been running on at the finish? What does that tell you about the conditions they may want? Yeah, are they unexposed? Is there more to come? But unexposed and more to come, but having done something and having proven that they can maybe get their head in front or compete. Was there an excuse for any recent poor form? Hot form, I've mentioned class. A lot of those things feed into class. RPR, obviously the class they've been running at, but you need to look at the ratings of the bands of the horse they've been running at and the race ratings bands. A 0 to 95 dropping into a 0 to 87 or something, which is an example of one of the tips above. That's quite a class drop. yeah, class twos into class threes, or even those moving up in class but have their performance indicated they can handle it. And with those types, horses moving up in class, you may be likely to get a bigger price because a lot of punters may be put off by that. And yeah, looking at class, looking at the level of form they've achieved, have they raced in better races before? Have they done well in better races before, etc. So I think that might sound like there's quite a lot there to take in. Or things I focus on, but they're with the likes of GG's, the excellent GG's Gold and Horse Race Base. There's other tools available, of course, but these are my favourites. I can do a lot of those within seconds, clicking buttons, looking at a lot of those stats, hot form, pace profiles, and starting to make a decision before kind of more in-depth analysis and pondering and video analysis and everything else, all using my starting points and ways in on the blog or notebooks and eye catch and things in my head. So I think that's it. Hopefully there's at least one thing you may take away from this rather lengthy video that will hopefully improve your punting. Maybe there's some other things. Obviously, don't forget, in the end, it all does come down to price. And if you've got unknowns or factors that you're not sure on, or the horse isn't proven at something, you generally want it to be built in the price to be a bigger price. You won't be able to take a risk on something you don't know, and it's easy to do that with bigger price horses. You generally want to be getting into the habit, if you can, of backing horses at a bigger price than you think they should be, for whatever reason, and analysing the favourite and the top of the market and seeing if you are anti them, if you're anti the top of the market, is a good way to do that as well. Helps create value automatically if you think the favourite will get beat. And yeah, again, it's trial and error and kind of getting better as we go along, which is my main aim. Recent weeks would suggest my form has improved and my ability anyway, and my approach in terms of analysing flat races, in particular in flat handicaps, is working for now. I will have some minus 20, 30, maybe even 40 losing runs at some point before the season is out, because it's a hard game and it's just tough. But as I sit here with a pile of plus 70 points for the flat season, I have something to work on and something to build on. And with that said, I will look forward to the weekend and next week at Goodwood and Galway with some excitement, and hopefully we can find a few more winners in the coming weeks. But yeah, the purpose of this video was to help you talk through how I do things and how I think, and whether or not some of those methods and ideas may help improve your own ability to find even more winners. Like I said, you can click the link if you're watching this on YouTube below the video, or the banner below this video if you want to try the excellent GG's Gold for 30 days for £1. There is also another link below where you can actually register as a free user, and you can get access to 3 or 4 races a day using these suites of tools. So I would obviously recommend you all to do that, and that might be a way you can trial it, and then in time you might want to either use it longer term or not. But it's a brilliant piece of kit, and it's one of the reasons I'm probably doing quite well. And yeah, with that said, hopefully you found this video interesting. I've been going on for far too long. This is Josh saying thanks for listening. If you've got any questions, queries, do post a comment below or email me. I'll be happy to answer them. And yeah, whenever and wherever you're watching this, thank you. Hope it's been useful. And until the next time, this is Josh saying bye for now.